Hey, g'day, it's Matt Legg here, and I'm coming out of the retention sample lab room, hiding in here a little bit to get away from all the chaos. It's kind of fun. It actually smells really nice. This is where we do our flavors and taste testing and a lot of our quality control and samples. It's a cool place to hide. I'm probably not allowed in here. So let's quickly do it. Paper of the week, okay? So paper of the week this week is a very important paper. This is actually a correction paper. I need you to understand that when you're following the medical journals and you're following the reading, that science is never settled. Scientists never agree. Myths are never debunked. Science is constantly evolving. And what we do eventually is we do correction articles. So there's been a whole heap of stuff lately about low carb versus low fat, or high fat, high carb. And basically the general consensus coming through from the memes is that regardless of the macro split, it's all to do with calories. Again, it's the if it fits your macros concept, means that it doesn't matter what you're eating, it's about how much you're eating. Energy in versus energy out, which we know there is a lot of variables. Now, what you need to understand is in science, we create definitions and we use those definitions as an assumption, and then based on that, we make a conclusion. In the early days, a low-fat diet was called a less than 10% fat diet. So they'd used to say less than 10% fat is what you need to contribute as part of your macros. When the American Heart Association diet and the Heart Association diets were doing that for about 50 years before someone actually did a study on that low-fat diet. And it was actually called off after 6 days, because after 6 days, their blood triglycerides, which is fat in your bloodstream, went up 30%. And your good cholesterol dropped by 10%. And after only a week of that, they had to can the study because it was too dangerous. Now what it actually means is you're not allowed to do a low-fat diet study on humans because it won't pass through the ethics committee. So what they do is the low-fat diet definition has changed. It's no longer 10%. Now they say it's 20 or 30%. Now this is where the problems come in. I get memes like this, and it says things like no difference. And what they've done is they've compared 30% fat and said that's low fat. We know for a fact that the low fat diet that you're told to have by your doctor for cardiovascular disease and that sort of stuff is a 10% fat diet. They're not allowed to study that. When you're using a low fat diet in your population, if it's less than 20%, this is when we have problems. What they've done in this correction article is they've actually gone through and done a proper definition of what low fat means. And in this instance, low fat is less than 25%. But that is still quite high, because the actual balanced diet is 20 to 35% fat and 45 to 65% carbs. So what actually happens is there's a lot of studies out there that have been comparing a balanced diet to a balanced diet. For example, they do a low fat one, they're saying it's 30% fat. The high fat was only 40 or 45% fat. They're both comparing a balanced diet with a balanced diet, and guess what? They're not finding much change. When they've done these proper definitions, they actually have eliminated the people that were in a balanced diet versus a balanced diet, and they've then been able to compare low fat to high fat and find statistical significance. It really is effective, to the point that they've gone back to these original papers that these memes were made on. Now, the memes are still out there. Now, in February this year, a paper was published comparing low fat versus low carb, and that was actually a 30% fat they said is low fat. It's not. They compared a balanced diet versus a balanced diet. In April this year, they went back and made a correction. They did it again further in the end of April, before that paper has now been deleted, and it can't be found in those medical journals online. It's not in the searchable databases for the medical journals. The memes are still going around saying a 1-year study showed no difference. Then they say a 5-year study. Anyway, it's a 1-year study that they talk about that has actually been deleted. The paper no longer exists after them trying to correct it. And then what they did is they did this massive meta-analysis to show the same thing. Remember, people say, oh, the 5-year study showed the same thing? Rubbish. They then done a correction. They've deleted all that other stuff. The correction now has given us the proper definitions of what a low fat is, and shown that what we thought was right was always right. So the important part of this is to know what you're talking about. When you are sharing an information and when you are referencing something, keep up to date. Science never stands still. It's always changing. Every time we learn something, we go back and review. But what we're finding is that definitions and assumptions can be used to actually promote an agenda, such as low fat or low carb. So just be aware of what you're reading and look at the details. Don't use the word low fat and thinking that the definition is correct. A low fat diet of 10% is not 30 bloody percent. And you can't compare two diets that are much the same and say they're much the same and expect something different. It's just fucking crazy. So anyway, keep up to date with your research. This particular paper was, what the hell is it? PLOS 1, it's the July the 2nd, 2018. We'll put up some links and all that sort of stuff and things. There's no adults here, I just do this. Oh, that'll do.